Welcome to the Project Zion podcast. This podcast explores the unique spiritual and theological gifts Community of Christ offers for today's world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Project Zion podcast. I'm Brittany Mangelson, and I'm going to be your host for today's episode. And this is going to be a What's Brewing episode, which is all about mission. So we're going to be talking with 70 Sean Langdon, who works in the Greater Pacific Northwest Mission Center. And Sean, I always like to just have the guests introduce themselves because I feel like you all do much better than anything I could come up with. But I will ask you to respond to one quick question in your introduction. I'm curious because I know that you are both a Taylor Swift fan and the Chicks fan. And they both have come out with new albums recently since this time of COVID. So I just want to know, in your general introduction, can you share your favorite songs on both of those albums?
Oh my gosh, that's going to be the toughest question of this interview. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I am Sean Langdon. Yes, as it's been mentioned, it's good to be back here. I think this is my third time being interviewed on Project Zion. I come from Springfield, Oregon, and like was mentioned, I work as a full-time minister for the Greater Pacific Northwest USA Mission Center, which is essentially Western and Central Oregon, Western and Central Washington, and Alaska. I serve on our Mission Center leadership team with a specific focus on invitation ministries, which includes New Expressions, which includes our online ministry, as well as youth and young adult ministries and our camping program. We have 3 campgrounds of which I coordinate youth and family camps for in the summertime. So that's kind of briefly what I do here for the Mission Center. As for the tough question, so I am an obsessed Taylor Swift and Chicks fan, and saw both of them the last time they came to the Northwest. The Chicks concert was like going to church. It was just great. And the Taylor Swift concert, we had like third row from the top of the football stadium in Seattle, and somebody from her crew came and said, "Hey, you guys want floor seats?" And we were taken to 6 rows back, center of the stage, and she was literally like 10 feet from us off and on throughout the concert performing, and it was just amazing and full of energy, and sadly but also amazingly one of the best nights of my life. But I would have to say there's a song on the new Taylor album called Exile, which is a duet with Bon Iver, and it is just absolutely beautiful and kind of haunting, and I just absolutely love it. The Chicks one is a little harder for me because there's some obvious ones. March March is just a great protest anthem, but there's one called, I posted about it on Facebook, Everyone Loves You. And it was just this, I think it's what it's called. It's just this haunting song that about, when you're kind of in an abusive relationship, why nobody else can see what's going on but you. And, why does everyone else love you when I know what it is that you do and whatever. And so it's just kind of that haunting. I love songs about real life, and I've stirred with you emotion and songs that have a message and a meaning that are more powerful than the song itself. And for me, the Chicks did it on that one. So got through that tough question. But
I'm so glad I asked that. And yes, I would agree on both of those songs. I think it's Exile is really good, and actually my little boy loves that song as well. So
so good.
That's great.
I will say that you should all listen to "Tights on a Boat" though from the Chicks album, because it's a hilarious song. It's a good song. Anyways, they're all good. That's the problem.
I'm so glad we went there. So, Sean, yes, I don't think I mentioned exactly what we'd be talking about, but we're going to be talking about online ministries. Since COVID, we have just been highlighting unofficially a few of the different opportunities that people are having to engage with online ministry over the church, mostly we have branched out to Europe now, but we're going to be focusing in your mission center today. So before we dive into, I guess, post-COVID online ministries, I'm wondering what online ministries looked like before COVID. So I know that you work a lot with the youth. So I'm wondering, if there were apps, were there regular meetings online? Just what did technology look like as far as mission goes in your mission center before we were all bumped online?
Right. So we had, like many areas of the church, Zoom had started to be used for a lot of meetings. And so we would have, our mission center leadership team meetings and staff meetings and the occasional meeting with pastors or other teams. But we really had not fully utilized online capabilities. In fact, we're saying to ourselves now, like, how did we not think of this sooner? Why did it take a pandemic to realize the world of possibilities with online ministries, which we'll get into? We had started focusing a lot on new expressions in our mission center, or just starting to wrap our head around it and process it about a year and a half ago, which led up to this big conference experience, Mission Center Conference last fall, where we were going to launch our new expressions initiative. And as part of that, there was going to be a couple of initiatives that we were going to start as a mission center to help launch new expressions of community here. One of them was a ministry that I lead for our LGBTQIA+ community and allies. And the other was going to be an every other month online worship experience. We had our first one in February, of which you were the guest speaker for. And we had intended not to have our next one until April. And then March happened. And so before that, that was all we pretty much did. We had not really explored online ministries with youth or with other specific populations or to the entire mission center and beyond, besides meetings. We never explored it really fully missionally. We were just getting to dive into the whole online worship thing, kind of modeling it after what some other areas in Oklahoma and in the West Mission Center and some others had started doing as well. So
it's good that you were starting to think of that, and that you had one meeting under your belts and you had plans to do more, but kind of cute that you thought that you could just take the rest of March off.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's definitely was something moving right within the church at that time, because there were already several online ministries happening, either on a monthly or an every other month basis. And of course, Community of Christ kind of, I think prophetically, especially now, having online communion go forward just, a few months before all of this started to unfold. So I think that there's definitely the Spirit was moving in a direction that was leading us to it. And we sensed that in our area as well. But yeah, who knew what was to come?
Who knew? Exactly right. So COVID hits and the entire church essentially moved to online. And I know that you all have just tried a lot of different things. As I've watched, the Facebook events show up in my feed, I can just tell that there's been a lot of creativity, especially around reunion. But just start talking about what you all have done as far as Mission Center Ministries since COVID hit.
Sure. So I'll kind of start with, the beginning of it. We actually had the same weekend that the church kind of started shutting down for COVID precautions. I had a 70s ministry retreat planned for my mission center and a guest minister from World Church coming out. So he was in the middle of flying out when everything was starting to shut down. And so it was like, what do we do? Do we continue this? Do we not? We ended up having it as kind of our last official event, since he was already out here, and we checked in with all the participants and said, stay home if you don't feel comfortable. So we didn't have anything that first weekend, but already the wheels were turning with, okay, if all of our congregations are being shut down, and we have in our mission center over 30 congregations, we need to, what can we provide in terms of ministry to the entire mission center? What kind of worship ministry can we provide, knowing that we would have congregations that could possibly do it, and we found out later that they could, and some do. Many of our congregations do have online ministries, but I'll get to that. But we we just kind of started exploring how can we provide this ministry then every Sunday for, our folks. And of course, well, at first, of course, it was, we're going to announce it for 2 weeks. And then maybe in 2 weeks, this will be gone. Our congregations will be open by Palm Sunday. That was wishful thinking. But the team that I had that was going to help with our every other month worship started then becoming kind of a listening board, kind of a springboard for ideas and whatnot. But essentially I took on this coordinator role of our Sunday worships. And so we started scheduling them out the first couple of weeks. And then that led to realization where we're definitely through all of April and probably into May. And so we started scheduling some more, looking at different ways. We had our youth leader worship. We had a testimony worship that through the Emmaus scripture, that different places on the Emmaus scripture and elements within that part of the journey to Emmaus, we would stop and have a testimony that represented that part of the journey, and just doing some different things with worship, and of course speakers. And one of the blessings with moving to online worship for the Mission Center has been being able to bring in speakers from around the church that our membership and friends would not have otherwise been exposed to. So it's allowed us to introduce the more wider diversity of what it means to be community of Christ, instead of just all of us in our own little bubbles in our congregations or our mission center. But as soon as we started focusing on online worships and realizing that there was going to be other needs for support during this time, we immediately, somebody said, I would just love a time to get on and meet informally and visit. And so then the idea for Breakfast Club came up, and Breakfast Club meets every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings. Well, first it was Monday and Thursday, and then somebody said, hey, I work during the week still. I'm an essential worker, but I have weekends off. Can we do a weekend one too? So we added Saturday. Some people that participate would love to have it every morning. But we had, from 8 to 9, it's just, can you get on? You can bring your breakfast to the computer with you, or a morning beverage, and just visit and share, and there's nothing planned. We don't have a script or anything like that. At the beginning, we had a question of the day, but that kind of fizzled out to just being this natural flow. And people would say, over time, hey, you were doing this on that day, or you weren't feeling well. How are you today? And checking in. And it just has become its own little community. And it's still going 3 days a week now, all these months later. We also started what we call a Faith and Formation series, which is, we're not gathering for Sunday school anymore. So what are some formational opportunities that we can provide? And so that has been every Wednesday night we have done that. And that is more of a class type with discussion opportunity. Right now we're in the middle of a series that is looking at kind of Theo TED Talks with different religious leaders. And then we're watching the video together and then discussing how does this, what they say, relate to community of Christ, identity, message, mission, and beliefs as well. And how are they different, or, whatever. And we even started doing that now from an interfaith perspective too throughout this class. So there's that. As the weeks went on, now mid-April, we realized, hey, we have several people needing some temple school classes. The church's kind of formational experience that we offer from a headquarters perspective, especially for those that are getting ready for ordination, priesthood, but open to everybody, of course. And all are encouraged to take them to become more aware of the fullness of ministry and community of Christ. And so we started looking at what people needed and offering online courses as well. And we've done at least 3 so far. We're getting ready to start a 4th one. And that's been very helpful because people have time now to take some of these courses that they need to get done. And that's provided a great ministry for those folks that have taken it and helped them go deeper. We had, in mid-April, we had Spirit Week. So there was kind of this, I saw that a family in our mission center, because the kids were not in school, the family decided that they were going to have Spirit Week for their family so it can kind of feel a little bit normal for the kids. And so every day was something different. And I when I saw that on Facebook and Instagram, there are pictures every day for their family, I was inspired, that would be a great thing for us to do. That would involve all ages, but it would be kind of a nod to our children and youth if we had our own Spirit Week. So we did. For a week in April, from Monday to Sunday, we had everything from sock day to crazy hair day to these are my church clothes Sunday. And it was a great unifier for our mission center. People were posting pictures. They were doing so in a way that was a little more vulnerable, posting wacky hair. Maybe they wouldn't have necessarily done that or been embarrassed to do that before, but it was great to see people be creative and join together in community in that way. At the beginning, there in April, we realized that because people were so, it was jarring to go from this pace of everyday life to then all of a sudden having to stay indoors and distanced, and the potential of you getting sick and worrying about that, the potential of knowing that you had family members that might get sick. And so we had, and just knowing that we had, there was this big focus on essential workers, especially, and what they were doing and the sacrifice. So we ended up having an online vigil experience as well at the end of April. And that was just a really special evening. We had a team together of like 5 to 7 people and to help plan that. And we had videos of people sharing from different backgrounds. We had the mother of a graduate who's also a teacher share. We had somebody who works for an infectious disease unit for a hospital share. We had a police officer share, just a variety. We had a youth share, just a variety of stories of this is how this is affecting my journey right now. And then they also, at the end, we had them share clips of where they find hope, though, in the midst of all that as well. And it just was this beautiful, beautiful experience to remember those who were experiencing loss, those who, whether it be physical, death or other losses in life, as well as to lift up each other in prayer. As we continue to unfold, and again, our worships, we started planning out a little bit longer and a little bit longer, and we realized, we needed to start thinking about other people we wanted to bring. We got Steve Veazey to come one Sunday, so we were super excited about that as the president of our church, and again, apostles, but also we started looking at other church leaders who are maybe mission center presidents in areas that would not otherwise get to know people from like the West Coast to the East Coast. And so we ended up, being able to bring in some other friends that we have. Ryan Pitt, who's the mission center president out on the East Coast for a mission center out there, and some other areas like that I think it's important for people to just, like I said earlier, become exposed to a wider diversity of ministry. As well as our own, members and friends in the Mission Center who were able to provide ministry now at this different level. And so, we're a mission center that, because we are so large and we're spread out, because we have Alaska, which you have to hop over, British Columbia to get to, we only meet together once a year, and that's at Mission Center Conference when we send delegates to Portland for a weekend conference. And so this has also been a great unifier for us to receive ministry from people, for people in Alaska to receive ministry every Sunday from people in Washington, Oregon, and for people in Washington, Oregon to receive ministry every Sunday from folks in Alaska, to having people join us from other mission centers. We have several from your mission center in the West who joins us every Sunday as well. And because of connections, family connections, or, campground connections or whatever. As well as other places in church where people, they go into one worship and then they go into another worship. They just kind of fill their Sunday morning with 3 or 4 worships. And so we get a wide variety, and which has been great. And some of those folks have actually started, then we've invited them to provide ministry in some of our worships because we've gotten to know them and see them online. And so that's been a blessing. We had somebody say, hey, can we have a talent show online? That would be a fun activity to have. And so we had, in late May, we had a talent show where we, people submitted, most of them submitted videos of their talent, but we had kind of a bring your own ice cream to your computer, a kind of ice cream Sunday social type thing. And we had people share their talent. It was just a fun evening, and we laughed, during the pandemic, especially those early months. Any opportunity to laugh that's just healing for the soul. And those moments were probably more rare than common. And so it was just one of those evenings of we can just let our hair down and have fun and be somewhat normal with each other through that experience. We also then had a prayer, kind of a prayer service in May to kick off the month, and decided that that's something we wanted to do every month. So the first Wednesday of every month became prayer service as part of our Faith and Formation series as well. At the same time as all this is going on for the Mission Center, we're examining how can we respond to the diversity of needs, recognizing that this is a lot that we're providing for the Mission Center, but that doesn't mean that everybody's expected to participate, right? We're trying to find different entry points for different people that have different needs. So yeah, there's some people that participate in it all, but there's others that they really just need the relational aspect of Breakfast Club every week. They don't join Faith and Formation, and maybe they don't even join every Sunday worship, but that's what they need. Some people need the stimulation of Faith and Formation to help with their ongoing learning experience and just, engaging their mind at this time. And so there's that. And so that's always our goal and focus. But I've been really pleased with seeing how our congregations in the Mission Center have also responded to the call of what's going on and how they can provide ministry to their membership in their local areas as well. So we have several congregations that meet during the week, usually on a night, a weekday night or a weekend night of the week. We have one congregation that meets on Sunday mornings for worship before the Mission Center. So they do their worship, and then most of them come on and join us for the Mission Center worship. It's like I'll talk about my home congregation, for example, here in Eugene, Oregon. They meet every Friday night pretty much. And at first it was just kind of a drop-in, say hello, let's stay connected. But then it was starting to get more creative. So then we had a night where we all submitted like our baby photos, and they put them on a PowerPoint, and we had to guess who in the congregation that baby photo was for. And so that was just a fun experience one night. We did bingo one night online, and that was another fun. We have a member of our congregation that is a bingo caller for like a senior center or something like that in his community. And so he was able to use his gifts to do that. And so there's just a variety of things that have happened through online ministry. We have worships once a month as a congregation. And I just see other congregations also finding a way. Some are doing more learning experience. We have a congregation in the Seattle area that just north of Seattle, that when the whole, after George Floyd's murder, and then the awareness of Black Lives Matter movement again, realizing that, this needs to stay in the front of our consciousness and not just slip away until the next time something horrific happens. We need to continue to work on this. And I think that's been our failure as a society every time one of these tragic moments happen. And so we have a congregation that has continued. Every Thursday night they meet as a congregation, and a lot of their focus since then has been on learning and understanding and watching some videos together and reading different material and discussing them, and just trying to become as aware as possible of the journey of other people and what has led to this moment in time. And so that's a great way for me, when I think of Christian community and following in the footsteps of Jesus, I think that's this congregation, saying we need to focus on this and make this a priority for us. It's inspiring to me. And, I've said to them, in a lot of ways, I think that you have a way to kind of be in the forefront for our Mission Center to help show us, how we're supposed to move forward and continued conversation for this. We had a young adult, we've had a young adult event, only one so far, but hoping for more, where we did bingo night, and the young adults absolutely loved it. We had prizes, of course, because, you always have to have something to bring the lure people in, and it can't be food right now. So we had prizes that we mailed out, some Starbucks and Dutch Bros gift cards and whatnot. We also then started early on, actually, and I forgot to mention this part, with our youth group. Right away, we started an online youth group that at the time started meeting weekly. There was, again, youth. We had several youth on our mission. We have a ministry called Caravan, and it's a mission trip that happens in the summertime, but they meet monthly during the school year, starting in January to prepare for that trip. So all of a sudden that came to an abrupt end after our March gathering. And so they were used to gathering once a month, and we had others that were just, I think, needing connection. And so we just started having youth group. I asked them what they wanted to call it, and they ended up with Holy Hangout, which I was I thought it was cheesy at first, but I thought that sounds like a name that an adult would give a youth group ministry, and they would be like, wait, what? But they came up with it on their own, and it's worked out great. And it's become a name that I really love for what we do. And so we were meeting every Tuesday night, and we would just have a guest of the week. We would invite somebody from the mission center, usually somebody they would know from youth camp staff or something like that, or mission center leadership, to come and just engage them in a question of the week. And so we would have a prayer and then a mixer question and then a special guest question of the week, and then just informal sharing after that. I was approached by some people in Michigan in May to have a joint youth group between them and us. And of course, they're 3 hours ahead of us. So we agreed on one of our normal Tuesdays that we would meet. And we decided that we would have to meet at 5:30 because for them, that would be already 8:30. And so we needed to find a time that worked. But I was concerned that that would be too early for our folks, for our kids. And so I bribed them by ordering pizza to each of their houses to be delivered, which was the most ridiculous thing that I've probably done in youth ministries to try to coordinate. I will probably not do it again because it was not fun. But they all got pizza delivered to their house. And so they thought it was like the best thing ever. And they joined in, and we had a great youth group with Michigan that night. And youth, closing on the gap between youth and the church from the East Coast to the West Coast. And, I was trying to deliver pizza to Canada. We have youth in our youth group that are, because of our spectacular delegation for our annual church camp at Graceland University for youth. Our spectacular delegation includes British Columbia youth that come with us. And so they join us in our Mission Center youth group as well. So I was trying to deliver to Canada, but because they have different zip codes, I couldn't put in my zip code to order online to send to them. So luckily those parents of those kids joined in and got pizza for their kids, so they didn't have to miss out at the last minute, like within an hour left to go. But that's been kind of the variety of, besides Resumium, which I know we'll get to, our online reunion experience, that's been kind of the variety of things that we have offered in our mission center. We also have that's for senior high. We also have since started an online junior high youth group once a month that meets on a Saturday night as well. And so that's also happening. There's just a variety of different things, a variety of different entry points, ways to stay connected. We're continuing to think of other things that we can do that might be fun or different, and not the norm, ways to gather online.
Wow. It sounds like you've been busy.
Just a little.
So when I asked you to do this, I knew that you had done a variety of things. I particularly remember the Spirit Week and the Crazy Hair Day. That stands out. In my Facebook scrolling, I definitely remember seeing people that I know and love dearly and thinking, what are they doing? And then realizing, oh, this is part of something bigger than themselves. They're not just, wearing like paper plates on their head or whatever just for the heck of it.
Yeah, I was going through, I have somebody giving a testimony in the worship this Sunday, and when I have a testimony and or speaker, I always put their picture on the advertisement that I do for our services online. And so I was going to her Facebook page and looking through her pictures. I'm like, where did this picture, like, oh my gosh, why would you have this picture on here? And then I realized, oh, it's from Spirit Week. It's from Crazy Hair Day.
That was us that made her do that.
Yeah. She can rest assured that I did not choose that photo, though.
Oh, that's hilarious. And I love that they're, unless the person deletes them, they're up there forever.
Yes. But even then, they're still around somewhere forever.
They're still there. Oh my goodness. So I just have to say kudos to you all, because like I was saying, I knew that you had done a variety of things, but I did not realize how much you had done. And I love, like you said, a variety of entry points. So you have casual hangouts that have no agenda, that have no structure, that have no point other than just fellowship and connecting with another human being. You have educational pieces where you're taking classes and doing deep dives into racial justice and really important, timely, pertinent topics. and then worship services. And I love that you pointed out that you've been able to connect with other mission centers and other congregations and get other church leadership and church leadership at different levels to join your worship services, because that's one thing that, my congregation has started doing, is pulling in other people. Because when you think about it, guest ministry can be expensive. To fly somebody out,
Right.
to fly Ryan Pitt out to the West Coast, that costs a lot of money. But to pipe him in through Zoom, it's a really, really great way to, like you said, broaden your understanding of the church and get a different perspective. Because we know that in Community of Christ, we vary depending on where we're at. And so I really appreciate knowing that you all are taking advantage of this. And like I said, that's something that my congregation is just starting to do. We've had several guest ministers lately, and it's been just good to get out of our own little bubble and to recognize that this church is bigger than ourselves. So yeah, but I'm, again, just really impressed at all of the different ways that you have found to connect. And honestly, going from only having like a small amount of experience before COVID to then diving in and doing all of that. And like you said, we haven't even touched on reunion yet.
Yeah.
I'm just impressed. And yeah, I don't even know what else to say about it. I'm just super impressed. I do have a couple questions. So I am wondering if you have seen any sort of like Zoom fatigue, or have your numbers been consistent, or have you been able to, maybe reach out to people that have been disengaged in congregational life and then they've come back, or what it's like the actual dynamic numbers and stuff. What's that been like?
So, so the first Sunday that we had online worship in March, our Zoom account could handle up to 100 devices. And I had no like understanding that would even be, I thought we would get 75 devices or whatever, right? We had so many people log on that we hit 100 early on before the worship started. And I had to kept texting the participants in the worship saying, get on now or you're not going to be able to get on. Our speaker got kicked off at one point before he was able to speak. And there was a moment of panic, but so the next week we made sure that we expanded our account, and we had over 200 devices by the next week. We had typically, our average at the beginning was about 250 devices or so, 225 to 250, which, that's devices. So that represents several hundred people when you factor in couples and families and whatnot that are joining in front of their screens. The most that we had participating was the first Sunday in June, when Steve Easy did preach, the Community of Christ president. When he preached for our mission center's online worship, we had over 400 devices that week with a capacity of 500. So we didn't meet it there, but that was the most we had. And we had another week where we had really around 300 as well. But we've noticed that, of course, like in congregational life, when summer hits, numbers go down. So right now we're averaging probably about 175 to 200 every Sunday devices, which I think is still great numbers wise. But, people are out doing a lot of outdoor stuff this summer because they can't do much, else. And when it comes to safe activities to do during COVID, usually, camping and other stuff, hiking is listed as one of the better options to get outdoors and do stuff. So I've noticed that our numbers have gone down some because of that. Fatigue is definitely always an issue, right? Because all of us outside of the church ministries, we have work on Zoom. We have school on Zoom. We have, I've had some times where some friends and I have met online on Zoom or on the house party app and for game nights, just as friends, because we couldn't meet in person. So I would say that, Zoom fatigue definitely plays into it. I think people are starting to find their rhythm more and realize that they get to choose what they participate in and what they don't, and are becoming better at managing their schedules in terms of their time on their screens and devices. And so, not that it's great, especially for those of us that, work for the church. a lot of ministry is already done online. A lot of it's already the emails and everything. But that was just magnified even more because of it. And so I know that a lot of people in their employment, and like I said, students and whatnot are having to deal with that. So that's why we just stress that, you don't need to attend everything. Attend what speaks to you. Attend what, invites you to be engaged in. But it may be that, again, not everything does. And that's fine. Don't try to do it. Do what helps you take care of yourself, spiritually, relationally, but also personally as well. And so I think that is key to, especially moving forward, because I think the reality is that we're going to be doing this for quite a while longer before we have opportunities to really gather. I know that in my mission center, we're really being kind of careful about the process to reopen. And we currently have 2 congregations that are meeting outside, and that's it, out of all of our groups. So, and part of that is because a lot of them don't qualify yet because of the numbers, but it's also the numbers here in Washington, Oregon are a lot different than they are in a lot of other areas too. Washington isn't a hot spot anymore, and Oregon never was. So, and Alaska, compared to other areas, never was as well. So it's been a little different in that regard. But yeah, I would say that in terms of when it comes to fatigue, people are just starting to find their rhythm. And I think they found that during the summertime because the nicer weather, we've had a very sunny and hot summer here in the Northwest. And I would say compared to normal, but that's also become the new norm as well. Definitely different than when I was a kid. So I think that that's the key to it, and that people are finding, what they need to do.
Yeah, and I think that that's why it's important that you all have provided such a variety of things, because if something doesn't speak to you, then there might be something else that will speak to you. Again, exactly. Slam the door.
This side moment brought to you by the Mangelson kids.
I know, seriously. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I think that is true from what I've seen too, at the beginning of the pandemic. And I was one of those like hopping on every worship service. And it was partially because I wanted to support friends that were preaching or whatever. And like now I can, because it's all on Zoom. And then also just to kind of get a flavor of what other congregations were doing and everything. But I kind of hit a point where I was like, I don't have to do this. There's no reason that I have to try to be at everything at all times. So I know that, I'm still consistent with the ones that I am consistent with, but I'm not trying to overload myself with Zoom worship services or anything like that. So it's always a good thing to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay, so we've kind of danced around reunion a little bit, so let's dive into it. I know that a lot of other groups, mission centers, were just doing different things for reunion. I've seen several different ways to go about it, and I am just really intrigued to hear about your experience, because I don't know I shouldn't say this, but I will. I don't know. I don't think anyone else did it like you all. I think that there was a lot of mission centers that maybe took elements of reunion, but you all seemed to just like do reunion as you were going to do reunion and just do it on Zoom. So tell us about it.
Yeah. So as we were approaching the summertime and of course, facing the reality that we would have youth camps and reunions canceled, we have in our mission center, we have something like 8 or 9 youth camps and 4 reunions every summer, in addition to our caravan and spec delegation trips. So we have a lot that normally would happen. And we wanted to provide a place where we could still have a reunion experience together, even if we couldn't be in person. And so we kind of wrestled with, I put together a team, and we just kind of wrestled with not wanting to have fatigue during the experience for people, but also recognizing that we wanted to provide opportunities that would be reunion-like, that might feel like a somewhat normal day of reunion, but also recognizing that it didn't need to be somewhat normal as well, right? Like we have an opportunity here to do things differently, so that's okay as well, and that's to be embraced. And And, when we as we were leading up to this recognition that, again, not everybody has to join everything that we provide during the week. And so we put together a team and we talked about it. We decided off the bat, we have our online youth group. It was meeting every week. Now it meets twice a month moving forward. And we just decided, because they already had that experience, we didn't really anticipate seeing many youth necessarily want to get online in the middle of July for, to be on Zoom all day. So we decided not to have a senior high youth class and decided not to have a middle school class because we weren't sure that middle school kids would want to get online either for that kind of experience. Again, they were also meeting once a month. But we did want to provide something for the young kids because that's not something we had really focused on yet. So we did have, we said we wanted to have classes for younger aged youth children, elementary age children. And we didn't go the route of having online youth camps like some mission centers did as well. We decided against doing that because we just knew that, again, we had several people that, because we are in the Northwest, and it wasn't hitting us so hard, that would be out and about, that would be out, spending time in the outdoors. And again, it proved to be true. Over the summer, I've seen where many of our youth have been spending their summer days at lakes and rivers and hiking and whatnot. So I think it would have been hard to get them together. So then we came time to have our experience. As we led up to it, we decided to invite all of our guest ministers that we would have had this summer at our reunions to participate, and it worked. We were able to book them all during our online experience. So the basic schedule was it was Tuesday to Sunday morning, and the flow was Tuesday through Friday. We would have, in the morning time, we would have breakfast club for a half hour, so you could begin your day just by gathering together online and sharing informally. That part was Tuesday to Saturday. Also Tuesday to Saturday, we had an online kind of prayer and testimony service, which would be one of the first things you would do in the morning at most of our reunions. And that went well. We actually used, breakout rooms a lot on Zoom for that. And we just had some really good sharing. And again, sharing with people that you wouldn't otherwise normally get to share with, because we have 3 campgrounds. So, and 4 reunions at those 3 campgrounds. Plus we have Alaska, which sometimes they have members that might fly down for something, but they also have their own retreat that replaced their reunion experience. So, now we're doing small group prayer and testimony, sharing with people from, Seattle, Washington, and Medford, Oregon, and Fairbanks, Alaska, right? And it's just a beautiful thing. Also, we had somebody who started joining us from Kenya. And so it was somebody who was looking into Community of Christ, and one of our members was in contact with them and invited them to start joining our workshops, and then invited them to Resumian. So they participated in a lot of the Resumian events and shared and whatnot. And now, because of that, their Mission Center president is joining our workshops almost every Sunday as well, because he's made the connection with this person locally. In the afternoons, one day we had community lunch, and it was very, very popular. So we ended up having another day as well, added on as a special day. And it was just, go make your lunch after class is over, go make your lunch, come back and eat together and visit and share, just like Breakfast Club at lunchtime. I skipped class time. We had after prayer and testimony service. We made sure there was breaks in between so that people could get up and stretch and go to the bathroom, go get something to eat, whatever. We had a team, a subcommittee team on my planning team that focused on children's classes, and several volunteers that helped put that on, where they did joint activities together, but they also kind of split up elementary age kids into 2 groups, older and younger, and had separate events for them on Zoom as well. And so that was, I know that those that participated in that really enjoyed that experience. We had our we didn't call it an adult class. That's what it normally would have been, but we kind of, we called it an intergenerational class because we wanted all to realize that they could join in with Larry McGuire, one of our presidents of 70 in Community of Christ. And he led us in 4 days of classes that were really help people, I think, think more outside the box when it comes to church, and what church is to be about, and we're maybe being invited to go, which was really helpful for the body as well. In the afternoons on 3 of the days during the week, we had a chat session. So again, 2:00, people get online, and one day was with Mission Center leadership, and it was just kind of their time to ask us questions about what was going on in the Mission Center. We kind of shared what was going on from our jobs and what we're doing. We had one day with Larry McGuire that people could get on and ask him questions, and he could share about the work that he does, and people could ask questions about that work or World Church or any, more questions to go deeper about what happened in class. And then there's also currently a climate justice team that our Mission Center sponsors. There was supposed to be a climate justice colloquy at Samish Island Campground in Northwest Washington State this fall that has been postponed, but they're starting to do, because of that, they're doing online sessions right now, free of charge for people, and they kicked that off in July. So we had a chat session that was with this climate justice team of it's of church members in the U.S. and Canada that are leading that, and so that was a good experience as well. Then we would take a break. We would go get your canteen now, or just get back from nap, before the chats or whatever. But we wouldn't gather again until the evening. And the evening time we would gather for worship Tuesday through Friday night. And one night the first night was actually, I think, the coolest thing that we did as part of the week. One of the coolest things is that we recognized that, one, there was going to be a loss because of people not being able to gather at campgrounds, these sacred spaces for reunion and youth camps this summer. And, our campgrounds, of course, are also receiving financial loss by not having all these camper days, all these bookings. So we wanted to start off as kind of a unity event, recognizing that, hey, we do come from different areas, but we are one. So let's kick off by having a celebration of our 3 campgrounds. The first night. And so we had Barbara Walden, who is the executive director for the Community of Christ Historic Sites Foundation, who we co-sponsored this event with them. And she joined us, and she shared the history of reunions in Community of Christ. And then we had videos of on-site, location videos of what the campgrounds look like. For every campground, we had the origin story shared about how we got the campground, and that was shared by a representative from that area. We had 2 testimonies of people that attend camps at that campground and what it means to them. And it was an awesome night of we sang some songs, we shared just of learning more and celebrating sacred spaces that we all love. And then we had a generosity moment as a fundraiser, and I invited people to send money into 1 or more campgrounds in the Mission Center that they are connected to. Then we had, of course, pictures of all, campgrounds of events that happened there years past and current, which was a lot of fun to relive those memories as well. The second night we had Apostle Mareva from French Polynesia and her husband joined us for ministry. And so we actually got to have a video of a choir singing from there as part of our worship. And then they shared, and it was a little nervous at first because they were having outages of internet on the islands at that time. And we weren't sure how it was all end up happening, but their internet worked just as the worship started, and we had no issues the rest of the worship. It was amazing. And they did a great job, of course. And it was great to expose our people to international leadership for Community of Christ. On the next night, Thursday night, Chandra Newcomb, who is the Mission Center president for the Sierra Pacific Mission Center in Northern California, who was going to be a guest minister at one of our reunions, shared. And again, another just great worship experience that helped bring us together. Friday night, Larry McGuire, as kind of our reunion guest minister, shared the sermon with us. And we always enjoy an opportunity to listen to him preach in our Mission Center. We also gifted him that night as our reunion guest minister. He was our guest minister also for our conference last year. And he jokingly talked about yoga during some of his remarks about new expressions because of this church that does yoga in their sanctuary. So we decided then that he was supposed to be at 2 of our reunions this center, that we were going to get him a yoga mat for his gift as guest ministry. So that night we also presented him with his personalized Larry McGuire yoga mat as well. And he since then made a video of him receiving it and showing us how he was going to use it that we posted on our Facebook page, which is a lot of fun. So that was kind of that. And then we had campfire after our evening services. So that was kind of an online campfire. And then we just let people stay on and visit. So we had visiting that would go until like 10 o'clock at night. Just, normally it would happen in a dining hall at a campground usually. And this time it just happened on Zoom. And so that was kind of the Tuesday to Friday experience. Again, Saturday already started with prayer and testimony, but then we kicked off as an all day long scavenger hunt where we actually had a prize that was, we had a winner that was going to be announced, and they could submit stuff. And now that I share this, I realize that I never set the prize to the winner, so I have to make sure I get on that when this is over, because I'm sure they're wondering where their gift card is. And then that night we had our second talent show for the Mission Center, which is something we'll do probably, again here sometime in the fall as well. But and then Sunday morning we had our wrap up of just having a kind of a Mission Center unity worship, where our Mission Center president preached, I presided, and we just kind of focused on, where do we go from here to kind of wrap up the experience. But yeah, for us, it was definitely a balance of what can we provide that people would want to have at reunion, as well as, is it too much? But also saying, choose what you want to participate in. Don't feel like you have to do everything. Just pick and choose what sounds good to you. And at the end of the experience, what was so amazing is there were so many comments online, but there were so many comments online within the days following about how they were feeling the same kind of exhaustion that they would feel going to an in-person reunion, but they were also experiencing the same amount of kind of sadness that it was over, that they would feel once they leave the campground to go home for a year. And so, to me, that was a powerful statement to what online ministry can be. Because we had people participate in what we called Resumion for our online reunion. We had people participate that normally wouldn't go to reunion. Going camping for a week doesn't speak to them, or, whatever reason, or they can't get away usually because of work, but because of it being online, they can still do evening services, or whatever the reason is. We had people that participated because of that. Our classes, like our generational class, was probably like around 40 devices every day, off and on. And our prayer and testimony services were similar, 35 to 40, and it would fluctuate as the week went on. But evening services were around 100 devices, and definitely was a recognition and a nod toward the Holy Spirit moves even online, because it was able to have a camp experience online, and people still felt, not that they weren't missing, we all are missing not being in person and not being able to share in the experiences of being at a campground with each other, and those afternoon conversations or evening conversations or before breakfast conversations that are just natural and organic and just happen to invest in each other's lives. But at the same time, it's not a total loss. Also, there's other ways that we are connected.
It sounds like the numbers that you just shared, it sounds like that was a success, right? Like people showed up, people wanted that. And if people were expressing that they had the same, sense of loss at the end of the reunion online as they would leaving reunion, the same sense of like, oh, we're going to miss this. I mean, that's massively successful. And I know that took a lot of courage and innovation and creativity, because it was difficult. I mean, I think I can speak for every minister who's tried to do online ministries. It's not easy to know what it's going to look like or if anyone's going to show up. I mean, you could plan a ton of stuff and then have like 2 people come, but you didn't have 2 people come. I mean, it sounds like it was a really, really successful time, which I really think that, like you said, it speaks to just the fact that God can work wherever we are. We can meet on Zoom. We can meet God there. The Spirit can work with us even on Zoom. So I'm just really impressed. And I know that, there was a lot of ministers who rightfully so weren't really sure where to go with reunion and didn't know if it was worth the effort or if people would just over it or anything. But I really am so impressed that you guys just tried and it was so successful. Yeah.
I will admit that leading up to it for quite a long time, and I don't know if it was just because I was experiencing loss and grief over not it being a quote unquote normal summer, but I was not looking forward to it. Like, it was like, okay, I'm planning this, but am I really invested in it? And it wasn't until a few weeks before it was like, wow, this is really coming together and people are getting excited for it. Like, I'm excited to see what happens. And, you know, we had people in our mission center participate, but we had people that used to live here that now live in the East Coast and like the Washington, D.C. and Virginia area that participated off and on. And we had a church member that comes from the Northwest in Europe that participated off and on, you know, like I said, the one from Kenya. So it was just awesome to see how it united even beyond in terms of numbers where we're at. I also then, you know, came to experience, I've directed many camps and I've co-directed a reunion or two as well. And been on the team though for planning reunions for off and on for years since I was like 15 years old or 18 years old in high school. So I have been a part of that for a long time and seen that side of things. It's funny how directing an online reunion leaves you just as exhausted as the director as it does in-person reunion. It's just different things that are causing that. So there would be mornings during Resumian where I would, you know, text the person who was doing prayer and testimony service and say, hey, just to let you know, I will not be on this morning. That's, you know, I also picked and choose what I participated in so that I wouldn't get exhausted because I was up half the night. You know, we record all our services, and so we then email out the services to our membership that requests a link to it, but we also then post highlights on our YouTube channel. So I was working on editing videos after services, and I was all afternoon, I was making videos for services at night because everything, you know, you're now making all these hymn videos or you know, these other videos that need to happen and graphics and whatnot and get everything in place. So it's just a different focus as a director that I had to put my energy in, you know, towards, but it's amazing how much exhausting it still was compared to, it wasn't like, oh, this is easy. I'm at home. I don't have to do a work schedule. I don't have to find, you know, all these different volunteers, but nope, it's just a different kind of different activities that led to exhaustion, different roles.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just so much to juggle. Even, I mean, like if you're involved with the back end on the tech side, like during the actual event or trying to help people understand how to use Zoom, or there's so many different components to it. So I can only imagine what it would be like to do an entire reunion online.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
I also wanted to mention that we did, you know, in addition to not having people participate that would not normally go to reunion, we have people that participated that also maybe haven't been as engaged in Community of Christ for a while, which is we've been seeing that through all of our online ministries. You know, people that have kind of stopped coming, you know, for one reason or another, and it might be they're in disagreement with somebody in their home congregation, or the traditional church model just wasn't working for them. So going to church, you know, we have people that are participating that congregational life, building worship wasn't their thing, but they really like the online worship. And so that's the same with Resumian. We had people participate, and, you know, we have somebody who participated who's, you know, now who kind of had stopped coming to, you know, the Community of Christ congregation, went to a different church, but is coming to, you know, came to Resumian and come to our worships, and is now, you know, he's exploring where Community of Christ is right now, and being open to conversations about it. And I just have found it to be a beautiful journey that I don't know if it would have happened if it wasn't for online things like worship and Resumian and stuff like that. So those stories that you hear, those testimonies that you hear through people's journeys are happening still in different ways, you know, now as well, which is awesome. We've had people that, you know, are being introduced to the Community of Christ because of Resumian and worships and stuff like that, which is awesome. So the audience definitely for the week is not the audience we necessarily have at Reunion. I mean, we have people that are diehard Reunion people that didn't participate. It wasn't their thing. We asked the Reunion directors, do you want to help? And, you know, most of them said, I don't think that's going to be my thing, and which was fine, totally fine, totally, you know, there are two different experiences. Some of them did help though as well, served on the team. But yeah, blessings abound still.
Yeah, and again, just being creative and providing a lot of different varieties of opportunities, I think is the key. And that's why I feel like I've said the word impressed, I don't know, 800 times. And I'm not meaning to like make you all feel weird, but I really am impressed. And which is exactly why I wanted to talk about this, and specifically the ministries that you all have been doing, because you just have reached a huge amount of people in such a short amount of time, when you're basically making it up as you go, because that's what we're all doing in COVID. Right? Like we're all figuring out how to do our job in a very different way, and how to worship and how to just, stay connected with people. So
yeah, I've learned a lot more about Zoom since March.
Right.
So much more about Zoom and how to do music on Zoom and the struggles with that, and the horrifying act of trying to sing on Zoom, which is not something that anybody should do without their mics unmuted. It's a congregational hissing. Y'all sound beautiful, but stay muted when you sing as a congregation hymn on Zoom.
I have had one experience where we did kind of like a call and response song, like this is a repeat after me song. Yeah. And we concluded like it was hilarious, and it kind of worked, like maybe 60% of it worked, but we really think that the actions were what carried it through. And like we were all just so focused on watching what was happening with the actions that we probably didn't realize how terrible it was. Because at the end we're like, man, that actually worked. We figured out a way to sing on Zoom. And then we're like, but did we? We probably didn't actually.
Right. I keep having people push back even now. Well, can't we just try to sing this? I'm like, no, we really can't. Like, it's not going to work. And so then there'd be something like after a worship on Sunday, somebody would have a birthday. So they'd want us all to sing happy birthday to the person. And then after, so they, we would do it unmuted. And I'd say, and that's why we don't sing together during worship.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's like one of my favorite parts. It just reminded me of one of my favorite parts of these services. And I, have attended some of your guys' services, and then just our own is when everybody unmutes, and at once people are like, hi, Sally. Hi, Bob. Hi, Susie. Oh, how's Ryan? Oh, how just a million.
We're known for that in our mission center too. What I love is that we had a different mission center join us for a worship in June. Because they weren't doing their own worship that Sunday. And our people didn't know how to handle it at first, because they were quiet. Because the other mission center came out and they just talked like normal, like they went on their own Zoom account, worship. And I thought it was great. It was awesome.
Oh gosh, it's like being socially awkward on Zoom. Like it's a whole new level of just hilarity.
Yeah.
So, Sean, we've talked a lot about online ministries, obviously, and I'm just wondering if you could share just some of your biggest learning takeaways that you have come to understand over the last couple of months. If ministers, if congregations, if mission centers are wanting to start maybe expanding what they're already doing, I don't want to say start, because I think we're all under the understanding that people are doing this, but if they want to start something that they haven't done before, just what are your biggest takeaways? What would your advice be?
Yeah. First of all, I think find out what the people are needing, and not necessarily assuming that, which is the case in any missional opportunity. But, that's why when we started Breakfast Club, it was because it was a need for that kind of informal relational sharing that was expressed. And so we responded to that need by having it. And so I think, trying to figure out responding to the need, not because what we don't want to do is put a lot of effort into something that doesn't meet the people's needs, and so therefore they don't come. And so I think that's really important. It's really important to then understand the technology that you're using as well. And I will say that one of my personal reflections that I would like to be better about is that currently I have been the only one doing the host for everything pretty much. I have a member of a colleague of mine who does the Faith Formation, and she does all of that, so I don't do any of that, and she does all the Temple School classes. But for most Sunday events and some of the other talent show, I've done most of the Zoom hosting responsibilities. And so, also, put together a pool of people that you can help train to do that so that you're not doing it all yourself. Which is what I'm now going towards. I think if I had done that earlier on, I would have been able to engage in different ways myself, as well, which is important. And also the Mission Center gets a lot of Sean right now, so spreading that out so they don't get too much of the same person is also probably better for the Mission Center or the congregation or wherever that you're working, that you're bringing ministry to. Making sure that people have proper cues and instructions for stuff, because this is going to be new for everybody. But recognizing also that don't get stuck in the trap of saying, well, this person can only join by phone, so therefore it's not going to be meaningful for them. I have several examples of people joining by phone where it was, they were in tears because they were finally able to engage in ministry again after being isolated, or whatever it might be. So I just, be careful not to, not to minimize the impact that it's going to have on all generations, is what that kind of goes towards as well. The only thank you cards that I've gotten about this has all been from people that are above 70 years old, right? Who are never thought that this is going to be something that they would be able to receive ministry from. When we talked about new expressions of community last year, they would have never thought that they would have. A lot of them are now being forced to realize that, oh my gosh, this is all ages. I used to think that congregational ministries was the only way that I was going to be participating in church life. That was my thing. So when you talked about new expressions of community, I was like, well, this is not really for me. It's for other people. And then they were being forced themselves to actually engage in it and being ministered to it. So I've had messages from people who are homebound who are saying, wow, I get to engage with Community of Christ again. So so be very careful not to minimize also the impact that it can have on all generations, including our senior members and friends. It's those have been some of the most powerful encounters that I've had online with this ministry, is knowing how it has reached people who never thought that technology would reach them in this way.
I think that is so important, because I know that I have been guilty of that, is just assuming oh, well, they don't have the internet, so they're not even going to be interested, or, they won't be able to watch the thing or see my screen or whatever. And so we just kind of assume that they then shouldn't be included. That's terrible, right? That's absolutely terrible, but it's really easy to fall in that rut. But yeah, it's a really good reminder to not let our own preconceived ideas of the limitations limit us, right? We shouldn't just assume that something can't be done or that something won't be meaningful just because of, some perceived limitation. So thank you for that. That's a really, really good reminder.
Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned earlier, and I am in full agreement with you, that we're going to be doing this online ministry thing for a while. We're kind of in it for the long haul as far as COVID worship styles go. But I am curious to know if you have any thoughts on what online ministry could or should look like post-pandemic. So obviously the goal is to be at a campground together again. Obviously, sure. Going on caravan again, being face-to-face in a pew, that's what everybody wants. But do you see a future for online ministries with the church, and what do you think that could look like?
Right. So I think that, it has been a beautiful thing to see how Community of Christ has embraced online ministries, not only before this, but especially during this. I have been so impressed, to use that word, on what other mission centers are doing, or what our seminary has done to provide online conversations and learning. And our Historic Sites Foundation has done stuff online, and there's just been a lot that's going on. And I think that we're realizing that needs to continue. Post-pandemic, my mission center will still be having online worships on Sundays. Might be able to evolve into looking a little bit different for how worships are done. But it'll go to probably till Sunday evenings instead of Sunday mornings, so we don't compete. But and so people can do both if they want to, because as we have learned throughout the pandemic, people like going to church, apparently worships several times a day on Sunday. But what this has opened our eyes to is that we're not just creating space for people who would normally go to worship on Sunday or other ministries in the church, camps or whatever. We are now providing ministry and space for people who are in remote locations where they're not by a Community of Christ congregation. We are now providing ministry to people who are homebound and can't get to a congregation for worship, and who are able to feel like, I am actively participating in Community of Christ again. So not continuing these ministries forward, even post-pandemic, actually becomes a justice conversation for us. When there are people who are, homebound because of physical or health or whatever it might be, people who have to work on the weekends who are now able to find ways, because even if they can't participate on Sunday morning, they can watch the video of it later and feel a part of the group, or whatever it might be, or other things during the week. So my hope is, for Community of Christ, that we continue to realize that this is another tool that we have to bring ministry to people. And it is just as valid and as important as it is to meet on Sunday mornings or any tight day of the week in a congregational building. And trust me, I am an extreme extrovert. I love being around people. I work from home, and so I work really from Starbucks. Starbucks is my office. And so I have been missing my office the last several months because I just like being around people when I work. I feed off of that energy. So we can't, this has just as much validity in the life of the church for ministry as anything else does. And we're seeing people engage in ways that they haven't. And we're seeing relationships formed that would not have been formed. And so, yeah, I think the future of the church is going to continue to embrace different ways of gathering. And we're already seeing that, or it already was, right? Like we were prepared because of the communion and going to offering online communion. So that already was, the journey had already continued. It already started, And so that journey is just going to continue moving forward, and things are we just have to be open to where the Spirit leads us and the opportunities that it leads us to provide ministry in this way. I also look at, people who are searching. And being in the Northwest, we are an area that is Northwest USA that has a very high percentage of people that are the spiritual but not religious crowd, or people who have stopped engaging in church and religion, but not necessarily in their relationship with God or divine or something, however they define it. And so online worships or other ways have actually, I think, become a safe space to engage, possibly, because whereas when you go to a congregational building, you're on, everybody knows that you're not normally there. And so you kind of become a focus. There's kind of now a safe space with online ministries for people to start to engage in ministry and receiving ministry that is maybe safer for them. And then maybe that's an entry point for them that leads to something more. And so I also look at it in that way too. We can't deny that opportunity moving forward.
I love that you framed it as a issue of justice, that it's a justice issue. And I think too, it can be seen as a justice issue with kind of your second point with people who feel done with religion. A lot of times people are done with religion because they have been harmed by religion. And so, I'll go on obvious record and say that I don't think that Community of Christ sets out to be harmful, right? Our goal is to be invitational, to be welcoming, to be inclusive, to uplift the voices of the people who have traditionally been shut out by religion. Mm-hmm. And I think that we take a very active role in that. And so in some ways that's an issue of justice as well, is,
Sure.
Your LGBTQIA+ ministry, you are giving a platform and an avenue to connect people who, again, have historically been left out of churches, and
Right.
are providing an avenue for them to understand that God's grace includes them and God's love includes them. So yeah, I think that you connecting it to an issue of justice, I think that there's a lot of, we could probably do a whole
right.
podcast on that now. And I haven't thought about it as an issue of justice. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that also, because I forgot to mention earlier that with our LGBTQA+ and Allies ministry, we were scheduled to have our first retreat 2 weeks after everything shut down. So that we had to postpone it to the fall. And then obviously we've now just postponed that until this is over. And that we haven't rescheduled the date yet for it. just waiting to see how everything unfolds. But we then have had some online ministries for that as well. We've had 2 worships now. We're going to have a 3rd one in a few weeks in September, and where we've been provided just a communion worship for the LGBTQA plus community and allies in our mission center. And we've had several join from other areas as well. And I know that, our Harmony ministry also sponsoring now online gatherings. And so I think that's also, when you talk about justice in that terms, like the fact that we're creating safe space online in this time of COVID is so important, because that's already a community that is already harmed with a lot of relationships. And so there's a need to, I think, hunger. As somebody myself who's in that community, there's a hunger to be able to join with others that know what it's like to be isolated while also still on your journey of continuing to understand who you are as a human. So that's also been a blessing.
And I think too, with ministry specifically for LGBTQIA+, a lot of times, with COVID, a lot of these kids and young adults are now forced back into homes because they are not, like their home of origin, because they're not able to be in their college dorm or whatever it may be. And that's not always a safe place. So again, I just want to affirm, the importance of what you're doing, and that, online ministries really can be an issue of justice. So
yeah, absolutely.
So Sean, we've covered a lot of ground. I've asked you a lot of questions, but is there anything that I didn't ask, or, any last thoughts that you have, anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't get to?
No, I can't really think of anything that, again, we talked about a lot, and I think, again, just, where we're going is to continue to, even beyond COVID, embrace this new world that we're in. I think that, I believe that when we're allowed back in our congregations, it won't feel the same necessarily for a lot of folks, I think, but I hope that things don't go back to normal, as in, quote unquote normal of what it means to be in Christian community. I hope that this experience has transformed that, but I do believe that, congregations will go back to gathering and having ministries, because people are still going to be hungering for it. But I just hope that we are open to the world beyond what it means to gather in congregational community. Recognizing that congregational community, recognizing that Christian community is not just congregational building community as well. And that there are many opportunities for us outside the walls of our congregational buildings. And this has just been one area of that's going to be able to continue. And so I hope that we are always open to learning from this experience and recognizing that it's more, it's both. It's both and, but it's more than just meeting in a building for worship, the same flow of worship that we do every Sunday, and then going home. And if we're open to that, I think there are some amazing things in store for community of Christ moving forward, and our ability to reach people will be even more. So in the spirit, as kind of starting to have a closing thought, in the spirit of your initial question about Taylor Swift and the Chicks, I would like to share this thought. My favorite Taylor Swift album is Reputation, which is not a popular response in the Taylor Swift fan community. But I love it because it's sassy, and I love that. So I will say this to those that are listening, to those that, wondering where we're going. I'm sorry that the old community of Christ cannot come to the phone right now. Why? Oh, because we're being transformed. Oh, COVID, look what you made us do. Look what you made us do. And what a blessing that is.
What a way to end the podcast, Sean. Thank you so much. That's also a line that my 6-year-old son quotes, but the Taylor Swift version of it. I love that.
Yeah, I may as well that, and You Need to Calm Down, or kind of like go to Taylor Swift's last songs, but yeah.
I love it, and definitely a timely message. I mean, that's the whole goal of Christian community, right? Is transformation. So
yeah,
I'm
Absolutely.
really glad that we just came full circle with Taylor Swift.
I know. As we're talking, I'm like searching lyrics. I'm like, okay, what lyrics do I want to leave us with? Because I have to do this. I have to like have this moment at the end of the podcast. So I've used that in a sermon before. So I decided to use it again.
I'm so glad you did. Okay, Sean. Well, thank you so much. It's always great to have you on. And like you said, this is not your first time with Project Zion. So for the listeners, I'll go ahead and link the other podcasts that Sean has been on because he most definitely is a 70 because he talks a lot about mission and is really passionate about it, which I appreciate. So
it's good to be back.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. We'll obviously have you on again.
Thanks for listening to Project Zion Podcast. Subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, or whatever podcast streaming service you use, and while you are there, give us a 5-star rating. Project Zion Podcast is sponsored by Latter-day Seeker Ministries of Community of Christ. The views and opinions expressed in this episode are of those speaking and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Latter-day Seeker Ministries or Community of Christ. The music has been graciously provided by Dave Hines.